All right, so let's talk about Shabbat.
Yeah.
Let's start with questions. Like, what do you want to know?
Everything. I
Okay.
don't know. So I mean, so you know my background, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So I didn't really start doing Shabbat until Adrian.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to make sure that we're celebrating it every Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
We make like challah and try to at least have our sit down meal and light candles. And I mean, we both have weird jobs where we work, and so
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't know, we're still kind of sometimes I'll be working and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know like any of the other things that should be associated with it. Like I don't think we've ever done the post Shabbat blessing, or is that the one with the swirly candle? The Havdalah, right?
Yeah, Bill Kendall, very good.
And then or the spice
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so I like know about it from reading about it, but I haven't done a lot of
Yeah.
the other things. And so I try to make it special, but it'd just be nice to
know more about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. All right. What about you, Susan?
Sorry, I was having some computer problems. So I don't know specifically what questions I have, but for me, I think slowly over the last 9 years or so, I've taken on a bit more as time has gone on in terms of learning to make challah and making sure that I do candles and kiddush and motzi, and that the meal is nice and special. And I think one of the things that sort of attracted me to Shabbat so much at first was that it was just this 25-hour period where you didn't think about stressful, upsetting things, where you just could, recharge and relax and do things to, help yourself grow.
Yeah, exactly. I was struck by the fact that the rabbis were like, we like Shabbat so much that we're going to do some mathematical tricks to make it longer. So you're going to start your light candles 18 minutes before sunset and do Havdalah 42 minutes after sunset. And then you will get an extra hour in your day. And I knew those two numbers, but I got them confused for a while, like which one is before and which one's after. And then I realized that, the rabbis recognize that like the running around and getting everything ready for Shabbat, like you want as many minutes as you can get. So you don't start until 18 minutes before sunset, and then you don't have as much that you need to do.
Is it that you wait until you see the 3 stars before you do Dala?
So yes. Ideally you see 3 stars, but eventually they realize that sometimes it's cloudy. And then they're like, we need a number on this. And so then they fixed it at 42 minutes, which might have also been approximately like the amount of time it took to go from sunset to 3 stars being visible.
Oh, okay.
And the 3 stars is in the Talmud as like a definition of when the next day has come. Like I was doing some Talmud study, and I saw that, and I'm like, oh, that's where the Havdalah thing comes from. So that was really cool. Yeah. So I don't know if it's like they started off with, well, it's about 42 minutes until you can see the 3 stars. And we want an hour, so that just means 18 minutes on the other end. Or if they're like, we like the number 18 because of gematria and alphanumeric code of Aleph is 1 and Bet is 2 and Gimel is 3. And so 18 is Yud Chet, because Yud is 10 and Chet is 8. And using the commutative property of addition, 8 plus 10 is equal to 10 plus 8. So Chet Yud is like Yud Chet, and Chet Yud spells Chai, which is life. So 18 is like life, which is why when Jews give donations, they tend to give multiples of 18. I worked at my college call center my senior year, calling alumni, and one day the person next to me was like, that's strange. This person gave $36. Why didn't they just give like a normal round number, like 35 or 40? I'm like, let me explain this one to you.
So now have you noticed that when you do, you click and then it gives you donate in 36 or, and it'll ask you if you want to add to the amount so that the place that you're donating to doesn't receive the charge. Then so the obsessive compulsive part of me says, but then it's not 36 or whatever.
So what I've noticed is I tend to give $18 and then they're like a 3% charge on that. Do you want to cover the 3% processing fee? And I'm like, sure. And then it becomes 18.54. So you're still getting those multiples.
Okay, yep.
So with Shabbat, I brought some props. So candles. You can use tea lights. You can use long ones. Tea lights are nice because they're cheap. You can buy them in the grocery store or at Michael's. You don't have to find a place that carries like special Shabbat candles. And they come in their own containers. You know, there may be environmental issues with that. Depends how you feel about that. Or you could be creative and do some fun art thing with the containers. I don't know. This I have not worried about clearly. But you can use those. Some people get really fancy and use like oil the way that they used to do it. But by all means, like the key point here is that you're lighting lights.
So if you did oil, so would that just be till you run out of oil, or because it depends on like what type of lamp you're using. So there are some lamps that they'll run out of oil, and then there's ones that they'll just keep on going, you know, depending on how it is. So I mean,
Yeah,
I've never seen Shabbat oil lamps.
They're not very common. You don't want ones that last terribly long.
Okay.
Like a couple hours maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I've got I got an oil menorah now and I love it, or a Hanukkah, and that's awesome. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'd never seen one of those. I kind of like that just for the environmental impact. And,
yeah.
And by the way, most Jewel Oscos have
tea lights.
Yeah, have Shabbat candles.
Oh, Shabbat candles. That's true. That is true.
That's what.
Are you supposed to use a shamash to light Shabbat candles?
No.
Okay.
The only time when you would do that is if you were going from a 2-day Yontif, a 2-day festival, like the first 2 days of Passover or Sukkot, into a Shabbat right after. And then like there's a transferring of flame thing.
Okay.
Or you could be like, meh, whatever. I mean, a lot of the Shabbat details you can, like there's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law. And if the letter of the law is driving you Michigan crazy, like, you know, just go with the spirit of the law. there's an idea in Judaism of pikuach nefesh, of saving a life, that you can break any rule except for three in order to save your life or someone else's life. The three no-nos being murder, rape, and idolatry. But everything else you can break to save a life, including all of Shabbat. And the rabbis base this off of a verse in Leviticus where God says, these are my laws that you should live by them. And the rabbis are like, that you should live by them, not that you should die by them. Extending that to mental health when it comes to Shabbat, don't drive yourself crazy over this. And if you're in a hospital or somewhere else, I didn't bring them with me right now, but you can use LED tea lights where you just flick the little thing, and then good enough. You've done the best you could. So you light them, and then you say the blessing. How do we connect ourselves to Shabbat?
Question. So, should the woman of the household light them on Pesach, or is that I'm just not sure. Is that
traditionally? This has been seen as a female's role, but males and females are both obligated in lighting candles. So if you're a bachelor, you still have to light Shabbos candles.
Yeah.
So just if you are an unmarried female, then you still lead Kiddush, or you still do Kiddush. You don't run out and find a guy to abnegate your responsibilities to. So yeah, you can, the women of the situation can light Shabbat and or Passover and or any other candles. The woman and the man could each light one. You can both say how we do it.
Sorry, you cut out on that.
Sorry, the woman can light it, and you can both say the blessings.
Yeah.
Which is how we do it. And that's only because it's a little trickier to transfer the match back and forth between people. Unless you have the really long ones, which is what we use when our daughter wants to help. Our 5-year-old, she gets to hold the end of the fireplace match, and usually my wife will hold the other end and do the actual lighting. You can alternate weeks. Lots of different ways of doing it.
Okay. But and I mean, we kind of trade off. But I mean, usually, I think, usually Adrian does the candles, I do the wine, type
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, I think if it's something where one of you finds particular meaning in it, then we'll have deal to separate. Then it's kind of I prefer making dinner and you prefer washing dishes. Whoever finds more meaning in one thing or another.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was a tradition or
There is tradition, but tradition it is a gender stereotyped tradition which is not actually based off of Jewish law.
Okay. All right. That's perfect. I like that kind of answer.
Yeah. So normally you say the blessing and then you do the action. You say the blessing, then you wave the lulav. However, if once you've said the blessing for lighting candles, then it is Shabbat, which is fine, except then you can't light the candle because one of the few things that the Torah explicitly says about Shabbat is you can't kindle a spark. So the solution is first you light the candles, then you say the blessing. And then once you've said the blessing, it's Shabbat, but the candles are already lit. So you light the candle, you gather in the light 3 times, cover your eyes, say the blessing. Now, some people say once you uncover your eyes, it's like the candles were magically lit. You know, if you like that, by all means. What works for me is that, like, you wave in, you bring in the light, you say the blessing, and then just like take a moment, take a breath, like pause. It's a chance to have a moment with God. Kind of like basketball players when they're running before they make a free throw or a 3-point shot, they'll often like stop, square up, and then throw, because like that stopping for a second makes the next thing that you do more effective. And so like if you've had a chance to stop and pause, that's kind of like what Shabbat is meant to do on a wider scale, is like be the pause in the day, in your week. But it's really easy to like be hurrying to light candles and like hurrying to get everything ready and light candles. And then if you just go boom, 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 like you've transitioned. But if you like take an actual pause, then you've transitioned even better. There's a quote, Arthur Salzburg, maybe? I don't know, some famous pianist was asked why he played so well, and he said that he played the notes better, just as well as anybody else, but the rests between the notes, that's what he did particularly well. And Shabbat is like the rest between the notes. And this like pause after you light candles to talk to God or just breathe or whatever is a more intense microcosm of that.
And so what's the, I guess, the order? So it's light, blessing, wave while you're doing the blessing, or okay, so
Light, wave, blessing, pause, uncover.
okay, all right, cool.
And the pause is one of those things where it's like, if you don't do it, like you haven't broken any Jewish laws, God doesn't strike you with lightning, your candles don't topple over. The only punishment is that like you lose out on the benefit that you would get from doing it. Like most things in Judaism. The reason for the candles, again, is like most things in Judaism. There's like the reason why it started, and then all the other layers of reasoning that's been added on top of it. So the reason is pretty straightforward. You start Shabbat when it's about dark. You're having Shabbat dinner after it's dark. It's an era before electricity. Like, if someone spills hot soup on you because they can't see where they're going, that's not very Shabbistic. So the rabbis are like, we should have some light around here. So you light candles. And it makes it more special, and you can see what you're doing. Now, there are all sorts of other nice reasons that have been added on top of it, but like that's why it started. And the blessing has the phrase "Asher kishem mitzvotav tzivanu" in it because it's something that we're commanded to do. And usually that refers to things that we're commanded to do in the Torah, but the Torah doesn't actually say anything about lighting candles in Shabbat. So the rabbis got away with sticking it in there because the Torah does have a little line about like, when you're not sure what to do, you should listen to the authorities and they'll tell you what to do. And the rabbis are like, that's us, we're the authorities, you should listen to us. So it's like listening to God. So like if we tell you to do it, it's like God told you to do it. So we can say that you made us holy with your commandments and you commanded us to light the Shabbos candles, even though it's really the rabbis who told you to do that. So that that's a formula that's in doing blessings, as opposed to the next blessing, which is there's a kid blessing, and then there's and then there's grape juice, and that's not a like mean, you are doing the blessing, but you're not being told to create the fruit of the vine. You're thanking God for creating the fruit of the vine. So praising blessing doesn't have a Shirkei Mitzvot Tzivanu in it. So that explains like why some blessings have that and some blessings don't. The next thing on Friday night is blessing the children. Is this something that you guys want me to go into, like, to just like move right along with, tell you about in great detail?
So we've never done the blessing for children.
Okay. Very well. I'll give you the short version of it, and I'll give you the what, and then you'll tell me if you want more information. So for sons, you say Yasimcha Elohim K'Ephraim v'Chim Menashe. May God make you like Ephraim and Menashe, based off of what Jacob told Joseph in Genesis when Jacob was dying, that Jacob's descendants would bless their sons by Joseph's children, Ephraim and Menashe. For girls, we say, Yisimecha Elohim Kasar Rivka Rachel Leah. May God make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, the matriarchs. For kids of any gender, you follow that up with the priestly blessing. Yivrecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and guard you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichaneka. May God shine God's countenance upon you and be gracious to you. Yisad Adonai panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. May God shine God's face upon you and grant you peace. So practically speaking, you've got 2.5-ish options for how to handle the children's blessing. The parent blessing, we'll put it that way. You can say the traditional Hebrew. You can make up your own blessing, your own, like use it as a moment to like give your own message to your child of I'm so proud of you, or I really love how you handled this, or may God help you with this upcoming situation in your life. Whatever, spontaneous, make it up. Can be the same or can be like something different every week. And option 2.5 is you give the traditional blessing and then you like follow it up with some sort of individual thing that you make up or like personalize. Those are your options. But should you ever have the opportunity to do it, it is a nice moment of connection with somebody in a time when most conversations tend to be about like, did you do your homework? Hurry up and finish breakfast so you're not late for school. What these things that are called transactional conversations. And this is a moment of connection. All right, so that's the parent blessing in a nutshell.
Okay, so candle, parent blessing, washing hands, right?
Almost.
Well,
I got my hand washing cup. I may run and get it. Next is Kiddush.
okay.
So Kiddush comes in, before I tell you what the 3 different flavors of Kiddush, Kiddush is the blessing over grape juice or wine. It's the fruit of the vine. You can do it in anything, like you can put the grape juice or wine into anything, like plastic cup is fine. This is what we use on Saturdays, actually. Most people have a nicer Kiddush cup. You could use the goblet kind, you can use the shorter kind, you can use whatever you want, based off of the idea of Hidor Mitzvah, beautifying the commandments. Same reason why we decorate the sukkah. That makes it look nicer. The most memorable Shabbat that I had was when I was in Barcelona during college, and some friends and I, like we wanted to do Shabbat together. So I like Friday afternoon, we went to the market and split up in groups. And like one group found a loaf of bread, and one group found a bottle of wine, and one group found some cheese, and one group found some grapes. And we came back to our hotels and gathered in one of the rooms, and everybody brought their own hotel cups that like you get plastic wrapped, and like we did kiddush in the hotel cups, and did hot motzi over a loaf and over a baguette, I believe. So like, you know, you can do Shabbat wherever you are. You don't have to have all your fancy accoutrements. So Kiddush itself comes in 3 flavors: long or short, medium, and long. Short is the one-liner, Borei Priya Gafen. Praise you, God. Praise you, Lord of God, rule the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. Medium is that plus the following paragraph. The following paragraph talks about why we're doing Shabbat at all. Well, what Shabbat, what Kiddush is. It's like Kiddush is from the word kadosh, meaning holy. So you are saying that this time is now holy. It is now different from the rest of the week. And it gets at the 2 different reasons that are given for Shabbat in the 10 Commandments. So the first time that we have the 10 Commandments, when they are given in Exodus, the explanation for Shabbat is God rested on the 7th day, so we rest on the 7th day. The second time, when it's recapped in Deuteronomy, the reason that's given is God took you out of Egypt, so therefore you should enjoy your day off instead of spurning this gift that God gave you. The slaves don't get days off. And Kiddush refers to both of them. The first time it's like Zikaron Lema'aseh Bereshit. So that's that Bereshit, that creation idea. And then the second time it's Zeichel Yetziat Mitzrayim. And Yetziat Mitzrayim is the Exodus from Egypt. So both of them are encapsulated in there. The long version precedes the short one-liner with the 3 verses from Genesis, from the story of creation, about Shabbat. This is not included when Kiddush is done in service, because from the service, but they are at home. I will go out on a limb and say they are optional. They are certainly optional if you are around people who have short attention spans. And frankly, if all you can remember is Borei Priya Gafen, then like you've had a base hit, like you got to first base on this, and you should pat yourself on the back. Like you do what you can. So if you're already good at Borei Priya Gafen and you want to expand to the next one, by all means. This would be a good time to mention this book. This is called a bencher. Bench is the Yiddish word for bless. People often personalize these at weddings. This one's for my wedding. So you can get a bencher. I don't think they're very expensive. I particularly like the Bekolachad bencher because it has explanation, it has the Hebrew, it has the translation, it has transliteration. And I appreciate this one because the transliteration actually matches the way the Hebrew is pronounced, unlike some other benches that you can get, like the NCSY one. So Bekolachad would be my recommendation. Helpful for when you're like, I consult the bencher annually when I can't remember on Rosh Hashanah if you say the blessing over apples and honey and then you say the other thing for it or what the order is. But if you don't have everything else memorized, then this is even more useful. So the other nice thing about the bencher is it has Zmirot in it, which are Shabbat songs. And there's like there's a canon of them, of the long ones, the multiverse ones that have a slew of different tunes for each one. Like there's one called Drury Crow, which was set to the Sloop John B by the Beach Boys, which happens to be the most common tune for it. That's the tune I knew before I heard of the Beach Boys. But there's also a Yemenite tune for it. Like there's all sorts of tunes for these. And then there are short songs in here as well in the back. So if you own 4 Jewish books, this would be one of them that I would recommend, maybe 5.
I'm gonna see what version mine is, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. I'll put this, the books you should own, Jewish books to own, that are like useful. Put them in the chat. One would be a Tanakh or Chumash. 2 would be a Siddur. Actually, no, 2 would be a Haggadah. 3 would be a Siddur, and 4 would be a Bencher.
Oh.
NCSY, yes. Be careful with that transliteration.
Okay, which one would you recommend, or did you recommend?
I'm B'Kol Echad. Specifically, yeah. These are the 4 or 5 most useful Jewish books for like living a Jewish life.
Okay.
Which, I'm sorry. Which Siddur would you recommend?
Depends what you're using it for. If you're using it to keep up with the congregation that you are praying with, then I would get the one that they use so that you can follow the page numbers, which would be Shalem for Har Zion. If you are using it for like personal prayer, I guess, I would recommend the Pocket Sim Shalom. Which I don't know if the Love Shalom has a weekday version. The Pocket Sim Shalom has like weekday and Shabbat and holidays. Doesn't have high holidays, but like it has Pirkei Avot in it, and it's about as tall as the Bencher, but significantly thicker, like maybe that thick. So that's like a good travel prayer book.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that a Siddur Chadash, Justin?
This is the Likra Shabbat.
Oh, Likrat Shabbat. Yes. That's an older one. That's what I grew up with, actually. There's
then,
like.
Then here's our Shamash, and then my Siddur. So.
Your Chumash.
Yep. And then.
Excellent. Yeah. Do you guys know the difference between a Chumash and a Tanakh?
No.
The Shamash is the commentary, and the Tanakh, no, actually, I don't think I do.
Okay, so this is like useful information. So Chumash comes from the Hebrew number Chamesh, which means 5. It has the 5 books of the Torah in it. Actually, I have one with me. So this is a Chumash. This is, again, the pocket version. Eitz Chaim. And we'll open up to a random page. So you have Hebrew, and then you have the English, and then underneath both of them you have commentary. And there's usually a number that tells you the verse that it's talking about, and bold words that tell you the words that it's commenting on, and then the comments thereof. So Chumash, and then after every parsha, there's the Haftorah. Do you guys know what a Haftorah is?
Yep.
So, yeah. So Chumash is useful. A Tanakh, on the other hand, is an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. It's a Hebrew Bible, basically. So Torah is the first 5 books, Nevi'im are the prophets, and Ketuvim are the writings. Similar to an Old Testament, except that the early church rearranged the order of the books so that it looked like it led up to Jesus. Which is why Malachi is at the end, because it talks about Elijah coming to announce the Messiah, and that's seen as a good precursor for John the Baptist, whereas we put Malachi in with the other prophets. And end with 2nd Chronicles, because that's in chronological order. So yeah, both of them are good. And the Chumash, it's Chaim sized. And then if you're getting a Tanakh, JPS Tanakh pocket sized. I hadn't realized how much I prefer pocket sized things, but clearly, like, they're easier to deal with. I don't know if they're any cheaper. They might be, but they're certainly easier to deal with. And
Do all those have translations and then transliterations as well?
Tanakhs and Chumashim do not.
Right.
Siddur Lev Shalom has good transliteration. Sim Shalom, that was written in the 80s when they were not so worried about transliteration, so that is not a strong suit of it.
Okay.
It has some, but not very much. But most of the basic prayers that you would need, I think it has transliterated. All right.
So we're on Kiddush.
Oh, and just to bring it full circle, Shabbat is mentioned in both the Chumash and the Tanakh. There you go. Now we're talking about Shabbat again. Okay, I'm going to run and grab my 2-handled cup, and I'll be right back. Okay. So, hand washing. It's just much easier to show this than to talk about it. So the reason we wash hands before we say motzi is because the priests washed their hands before they did sacrifices. And when the temple was destroyed, the home became like the miniature sanctuary, miniature temple. So again, you can wash your hands with anything. Plastic cup does the trick. You're really out of luck, turn on the handle up and down quite quickly 2 or 3 times for each hand. But if you have the stuff, then a nice 2-handled cup is the way to go. You can get, these come in all forms. They're like the plastic ones and the metal ones, and I particularly like this one that has like the inlaid flowers. But the way it works is you grab one handle, you wash the front and the back and the front and the back. Some people do it twice, some people do it 3 times. Some people go back and forth, some people do it 3 times and then 3 times. Doesn't really matter. And then you grab the other handle with the other hand, and then you wash the other hand. And then you say blessing, which is it's an Asher Kishem Mitzvot Tzivanu blessing because you're doing something, and then on a Tilat Yadayim, on the washing of the, literally on the shaking of the hands. It's the same blessing as for shaking lulav. And then you wash your hands, or dry your hands. You can, have a fancy hand drying towel. Any towel will do the trick. If you're polite, you'll then refill the cup for the next person. Some people leave it running. I haven't yet figured out why. I wouldn't, but you know, you may see that. And then you don't talk, which is really useful to know, because if you're at a Shabbos dinner someday, God willing, when we can do these sorts of things, and like somebody has just washed their hands and you try to strike up conversation with them and they don't respond, they're not trying to be rude. They're just like following the custom. And the reason for the custom is that once you've said the blessing, then you have put yourself in a more spiritual mindset. And then you want to preserve that spiritual mindset until you say the next blessing, which is Motzi over the challah. I forgot to get a challah cover. Oh well. So you can talk to say things like, please pass the salt. You can talk for things that are related to Motzi, but otherwise you're not supposed to talk. And so sometimes people will start nigunim, which are tunes without words. My favorite one is to do the sound of silence without words. And, you know, like whoever starts it first, other people will join in. And when I do that one, I like to see how long it takes for someone to realize what tune they're singing. You can usually see it on their face. So you can do that. Once someone has started, it's generally considered polite to not try to start a competing tune. You know, everybody just yananais and drums on chairs and whatever until everybody is finished washing. And then at that point, you lift up the challah cover. You can have a challah board or a plate or whatever. And you say Motzi lechem min haaretz. Some people cut the bread, some people rip the bread, some people throw the bread. Generally, the bread is salted before you pass it around, or give it to people because the sacrifices were salted.
I'm supposed to be salting this bread? I did not know this.
Surprise! If it's around Rosh Hashanah, people put honey on it. If it's within your first year of being married, you can put honey on it instead. If that's you're being married custom, you can put honey on it for a year. Doesn't really matter. But yes, just make sure you don't have any police invited because they might arrest you for assaulting the bread. The reason for the challah cover, there are two reasons given that I've heard. One is that you don't want the bread to be aware that the grape juice is going first, and you want to be sensitive to the feelings of the bread, which is a great message. Just don't think about the fact that you're about to stick a knife in it or tear it apart with your bare hands. The other message, and the more like, well, I won't actually even say that this is the more likely one, but the other explanation that's given for it is that it's like the manna, which fell in the desert, the manna, and it was covered with dew. And so the challah cover is like the dew.
I thought it was so somebody can say, oh, what a beautiful challah as soon as you.
Happens to be a nice perk. There is a little bit more mystery to the reveal, a little bit more flair. Traditionally, there are 2 loaves of challah because there was a double portion of manna on Friday so that you didn't have to gather it on Saturdays or on Shabbat. Now that I'm thinking about it, probably the real reason for the challah cover is to like keep the flies off the bread while you have your table set for a while. Yeah. I've never heard that explanation, but it seems probably the most accurate.
It's not in the Torah though to cover your challah.
It is not in the Torah to cover your challah.
Okay.
Some people will quote take challah, which is that in the ancient days, if you were making a massive amount of bread, you would like take a little bit of your dough and bake it separately and bring it to the temple for the priests.
Is that why you burn the challah while making some?
And that's why people burn a little bit of the challah now, which has always felt a little wasteful to me. And I feel like if you're actually going to be within the spirit of that law, then you should like make a little extra and give it to a homeless person, because the priests got challah because they didn't have land of their own to grow their own food. And as a way of saying thank you to God. And if you're saying thank you to God, like paying it forward, paying your blessings forward would be a good way of doing that. Technically speaking, you don't need to worry about any of this unless you are making 5 pounds worth of flour. I make challah every week and I use 2 cups. So I've never taken challah because, you know, I'm not making enough for a family of 3. But, you know, should you be making 5 pounds worth of flour for your challah, you have options now as to what to do with it. All right, so that's that end of Shabbat. And then you have dinner and you sing Zmirot if you are so inclined. Again, the bencher. And you do Birkat Hamazon, which, again, the bencher. Birkat Hamazon is sometimes just called Birkat, sometimes it's called benching, which is Yiddish for blessing, which is what Birkat means, blessing of. When it comes to Birkat, the reason that we do Birkat Hamazon is because it says in Deuteronomy, you will eat and you will bless, and you will eat and you'll be satisfied and you will bless the Lord your God. And around that text has been built this entire long thing. So there's the short version of it, like there are the little parts, like the bones of it, and then there are like more parts of it. You could, I suppose, do the super short version, which is hubba hubba hubba, thank you for the grubba, yay God, which gets at the intention. One of the big ideas in Judaism is having an attitude of gratitude. So, like, if you just remember to say thanks God for after you've eaten, like, you're doing better than most Jews, myself included. So that can be something nice to work your way through. Again, a bencher will, particularly B'Kol Echad, will have transliteration. So if you get frustrated trying to plow through a paragraph or multiple pages of Hebrew, you can get used to saying those words in transliteration, and God doesn't really care. In fact, I think God would be pleased that you are, you know, making a good effort here. All right, questions about that end of Shabbat? Okay. Shabbat is a day of rest. So that's based off of 2 different things. One is the story of creation, where God did not rest, or God rested on the 7th day and did not create. And so just like God did not create, we don't create. So that extends to things like writing, drawing.
But is any of that in the Torah though? No, I mean that's all like interpretations over like, right?
So that's
because isn't like the Torah basically, I mean, what is what? Well, like I don't know.
Yeah.
This
All right.
was-
So we'll talk about that. I'm just looking up the text right now, so I don't make stuff up.
no, no, don't
all
worry.
right.
If you make something up, I'll just say David told me.
All right. So the story of creation doesn't actually say anything. It says God declared the seventh day holy because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done. Okay. So it just means that it's different somehow based off of that text. 10 Commandments.
Rules.
Right. So the 10 Commandments. Exodus. Where's he? There we go. All right. In the Exodus version, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, which, by the way, is just like a key point there that if you are making Shabbat different in some way, then you are, quote, Yotze. You have checked that box. So, like, I knew someone who was an opera singer and had to perform operas on Shabbat, but she had a special bracelet that she wore on Shabbat only. And that was her way of remembering Shabbat and keeping it holy, keeping it different. So, as long as you're doing something different on Shabbat, you are checking that box. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God, which seems to imply that the seventh day is a day when you're not doing all your work. You shall not do any work. All right, we'll make that explicit there. You, your son or daughter, your male or female servant, or your cattle, or the stranger who's within your settlements. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and sea and earth and all that is in them, and God rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Okay, so the idea that you don't create because God didn't create is not in the Torah explicitly. I would contend that it is one step. It is a relatively short step removed with interpretation. Like if we're keeping Shabbat, if according to the 10 Commandments, we are resting because God rested on the seventh day, and we're not doing work because God didn't do work on the seventh day, and the work that God did in the other 6 days was creating things, then it seems fairly logical to me to say, okay, we don't create either on the seventh day, and that's how we keep it different. The other direction for what not doing work means comes from the fact that further on in Exodus, it says, you should not do any melacha, you should not do any work on Shabbat. And a verse or two later, it says, and this is the melacha that was done for building the tabernacle. And so the rabbis in the Mishnah were like, well, what does this melacha mean? It means the stuff that was done for building the tabernacle.
Oh, we can't build tabernacles on Shabbat is
correct. You cannot build tabernacles on Shabbat. And when it comes to building tabernacles out of Legos, that gets to the question of permanence. Like if you're like building something with the intention of taking it apart an hour later, you can do it on Shabbat. If you're building a Lego thing with the intention of like leaving it there, like having it glued in place, so to speak, as the Lego movie talks about, like then you can't do that on Shabbat.
I did not even think about playing with Legos and stuff on that. Yeah.
Yeah, Susan.
Okay, so I read somewhere online, which must mean it's true, that you wouldn't use a Kindle on Shabbat because you're erasing, and that's one of the, I can't remember which category they were saying that.
Yeah, erasing is probably in and of itself one of the 39 categories of work. Okay. So that feels, I see why somebody comes to that conclusion, and that argument doesn't work for me. I would say you don't use a Kindle on Shabbat because you use electricity. And so one of the few things that the Torah explicitly does say is you don't kindle a spark on Shabbat. And so electricity, per the Ben Franklin kite in the lightning storm experiment, was interpreted to mean a spark. So we don't use electricity on Shabbat. Which also would mean you don't drive on Shabbat because that involves a spark to start your car. And then the conservative movement in the 1950s is like, shoot, everybody's moving to the suburbs. If we keep telling them they can't drive on Shabbat, they'll never come to shul. So they made a tshuva, they made a halachic innovation, which is how Jewish law has, like it's a game of chess, that's how you play the game, like you keep making moves. They made a halachic move that said you can drive to and from synagogue on Shabbat, just like a year ago they said you can use the computer for the purpose of connecting to Shabbat services.
But then, so I mean, the other thing is, I mean, we, you know, whenever we are going to Shabbat services, you know, there's lights on, there's air conditioning or heat whenever it's cold out there. You know, we have microphones on, and I mean, I know that they're probably turned on beforehand, or you have a Shabbos goy or something, but still, I feel like, you know, if you're going to make a rule saying don't use electricity, you know, like just using it because it was already on isn't like, you know, from at least from an electrical engineering standpoint, that does not make sense to me personally.
Right. So it's letter of the law versus spirit of the law. In defense of the letter of the law here, it just says don't kindle the spark. So like if the spark has been kindled before Shabbat, then presumably you could keep using it. And this was actually a point of contention in the 900s between the Karaites and the Rabbinites. The Karaites were Jews who were like, we don't believe in you rabbis and your Talmud. We're just sticking with what we see in the Qur'an, in the red text in the Bible itself. And the text says no sparks on Shabbat, so we're just going to sit here and be cold for a whole day. And the rabbis were like, well, go ahead, but we're going to interpret this as like you can light it before Shabbat and keep it on, and that's fine. Maybe you can't, you know, you can't increase the fire, but at least you can be warm on Friday night. So, and then we'll see who gets more followers. And there aren't very many Karaites today, although there are still a few, and there are many more rabbinic Jews, which is what all the other Jews are. Yeah.
Plus, isn't there the idea too that if by not doing something, you were going to, you know, really detract from your pleasure of the experience of Shabbat, that then you should maybe go ahead and do that.
Right. So oneg Shabbat, the pleasure of Shabbat. Yeah, certainly a principle. For instance, there's another principle that says, all right, for instance, that's a principle that sometimes runs up against other principles. For instance, there's a principle that says, or not a principle, a rule that says you don't use money on Shabbat. So, fine. So if you want to go to the Lincoln Park Zoo on Shabbat, and that's free, then, you know, you can go to the Lincoln Park Zoo on Shabbat, assuming you can get there by walking, not by driving, not by taking the bus. Whereas if you went to go to the Brookfield Zoo on Shabbat, that costs money. So like, here's letter of the law versus spirit of the law. Spirit of the law says, I'm resting on Shabbat. This is relaxing. I don't go to the zoo any other day of the week. It's special. So like going to the zoo on Shabbat is like Shabbos stick for me. And the letter of the law would say, well, that's lovely, but like you're still using money, so you shouldn't go to the zoo on Shabbat. So everybody decides where they come down on that sort of situation. It's even more like a related situation would be like going shopping in the mall. Some people find that relaxing, some people don't. You know, you figure out how you do Shabbat. For myself, I wouldn't spend money on Shabbat, but I would play Monopoly. And other people would be like, you can't play Monopoly on Shabbat. So, everybody draws their own lines, but knowing the principles that you're working with helps you to make those decisions.
And was I guess money spent like to make tabernacles? Is that like where that? So is that from a different? Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry if these are like dumb or.
No, these are good questions. That was from that is based off of, I believe, the stranger within your gate should not do work on Shabbat.
Oh, because you're causing somebody else to do work
Exactly.
because you're okay. Yep, I get you. Because you're supposed to let your slaves, even off on, so
exactly.
yeah, that one makes sense.
Yes, and it's a way of keeping Shabbat different, keeping Shabbat holy and special. So the rabbis were aware that they built they called it a mountain hanging by a thread. I recently found this in the Talmud itself, and I'm like, whoa, you guys were very self-aware, rabbis. They're like, certain things, like who you can and cannot hook up with, we know we have a lot of rules, and they're built on very firm ground because there's a lot of rules about it already explicitly in the Bible. And certain things are a mountain hanging by a thread, like the rules of Shabbat. And certain things are like doves flying in the air because there's practically nothing about it in the Bible, and we just came up with the rules anyway because we needed to come up with rules about it, and the Bible said nothing. So they know it. But yeah, there are a lot of rules. They come to the different categories of labor, there's the building categories, and there's the sewing categories for sewing the curtain, and the leatherworking categories, and the baking categories for baking the showbread, basically the challah. And when you subdivide these out, you get 39 of malachot, like major categories, and then you get like subcategories within them. The other thing the Bible does say explicitly is not to carry on Shabbat. And so the way that Jews got around that was, I don't remember exactly what it says in the text, but the rabbis, who knew the text much better than I did, figured out, either interpreted or read carefully, and saw that it was like you can carry within your house, but not within your
Oh yeah, okay.
Within your community, outside your house.
Was that like where's that based in though?
It's probably like the guy who picked up sticks. I don't know. Let me see if I can pull that. If I can find that.
If not, that's perfectly fine. I'm sorry if
I mean, you could. Now I'm curious, but basically their solution was, okay, fine, we'll make a legal fiction, put up an eruv, it's called, and turn the whole area into your private domain. So neighborhoods have eruvs, Jewish summer camps have eruvs. West Rogers Park, which has a lot of Orthodox people in it, has an eruv. Lakeview has an eruv. Oak Park does not, to my knowledge. Yeah, so if the eruv is up, then you can carry within it. If the eruv is down, then you can't, and you have to get creative, like tying your keys within your shoelaces, or your belt, or something like that. So that's part of your clothes. But that is and that's one of the few things that holidays are different from Shabbat. Like you can carry and you can cook on Yontif, on the first 2 days and the last 2 days of Passover and Sukkot, and on Shavuot, and on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. You can carry and you can cook. Not that you probably want to be cooking much in Yom Kippur, but if you had to, you could. All right, questions about all that?
Well, I'm sure we could probably do monthly or a weekly class on, just
We probably could. Perhaps we should go straight to Havdalah and wrap it up. Do a few more tidbits. Yeah, I have no idea where the carrying is. Unhelpful table of contents. All right, so on Shabbat, the greetings are either Shabbat Shalom, which means a Shabbat of peace, or Good Shabbos, which is Yiddish for Good Shabbat. And if someone greets you with one of them, you can greet them back with the same one or the other one. It doesn't really matter. The reason that it's Shabbos in Yiddish is because the Tav letter has a dot in it, and sometimes it doesn't have a dot in it. And Ashkenazi Hebrew pronunciation had said that the Tav without a dot was a Sav, and so Shabbat became Shabbos, and then you change the emphasis and you have Shabbos, which is also how you get things like Talis in Yiddish, which is a Talit, and you get Bris, which is a Brit Milah, circumcision. So it's all related to this sort of phenomenon. Let me quickly check my list. Oh, all right. I had a list of things I wanted to talk about, and we're onto Havdalah. It's the last thing on my list. So Havdalah means separation. Havdalah happens after Shabbat is over. Once you see those 3 stars, it's already Sunday, Jewishly, or Yom Rishon. It's no longer Shabbat, which is good because if it were Shabbat, you couldn't light the Havdalah candle. So for Havdalah, you use a braided candle. It could look like this. It would look like this. This one was white once upon a time, but it got dripped upon by this one. Could look like this. It's braided because it's the intertwining of Shabbat and the rest of the week. So there are some lines that we say, including one from the Book of Esther about Yehudim Haita Orav Simcha V'Sason Vikar, the Jews had light and gladness and rejoicing and such. That gets dropped into Havdalah. So you say a bunch of verses, then you say Borei Priya Gafen, which you can use your Friday evening grape juice cup. You can use a special one. We have a shot glass from a wedding that we use. Doesn't really matter. You don't drink it at that point, but you do say the blessing. Then you say Baruch over the spices. You can have a fancy spice container. You can just have a spice jar like the thing in which your cloves came, or your cinnamon. Cinnamon and cloves are the most common ones. You could, be extra fancy and get other ones, but those tend to be the most go-to spices for Havdalah. The reason for the spices is because, well, there are 2 main reasons that are given, and then there are probably many other reasons that are floating out there as well. Reason 1 is that you receive an extra soul on Shabbat, and you might feel faint when your extra soul leaves you, so you better have some spices to revive you. Reason 2 is that we are taking the sweetness of Shabbat into the rest of the week with us. Take whichever explanation works better for you. The grape juice is because, again, sweetness of Shabbat, also Holiness, we have grape juice and wine at moments of holiness. So marking Shabbat as holy time, just like we start the Passover Seder with a cup of grape juice, saying this time is holy and different from the rest of the year. We have 2 cups of grape juice or wine at weddings. One in the first part, which was the betrothal ceremony, and that used to happen like a year out, and then people realized, oh shoot, guys are getting killed, and we've got all these women that are like betrothed but can't marry anybody else. We better just like smush this together and make this a lot easier for everybody. But we'll keep both cups of wine, so we remember that this used to be 2 separate ceremonies. And the wine there is saying this relationship is holy and you have a different relationship with the other person than you had with anybody else. So that's what the wine and grape juice is doing at the wedding. And also wine represents joy, which is why at the Passover Seder we dip out 1 drop from our cups from the second cup for each of the 10 plagues, because we're rejoicing our joy that others had to suffer for our liberation. So that's that. And then the candle we already talked about. And then we say a longer paragraph. Praise to you, Lord God, rule the universe, who separates between holy and secular, between light and darkness, Israel la'amim, between the Jewish people and everybody else, between the 7th day and the rest of the day, and the 6 days of doing, because Shabbat is a day of being, not of doing. Praise you, Lord God, who separates between holy and secular. And I realized that I skipped over what you do when you do the candle blessing. That's when you look at the light. You cup your fingers. Again, multiple explanations here. Some say the whites of your fingernails look kind of like the moon. Some say you are checking your fingernails to be like, yep, I did not do any agricultural work and get dirt under my fingernails. That used to be my favorite explanation until I heard the one about when you do like this, you have a shadow that's cast by your fingers, particularly in a dark room where the only light is from the Havdalah candle. And so you are literally looking at the difference between light and darkness. And so you are seeing the separation that's happening as a metaphor for Shabbat and the rest of the week.
So is that at the beginning of the Havdalah ceremony, it's light candle and then look at your finger, or okay. Oh.
Light candle, say a bunch of blessings if you say a bunch of verses if you so choose, and again, Venture is your friend here. They say bless, then grape juice, but don't drink. Spices, smell them. Blessing over candle. Look, blessing over spices, but don't smell. And then smell them. Blessing over candle. Cup your fingers. Look at something. Also, that might be because the blessing is who creates the light of the fire, and if you don't use it in some way, then then some argue that maybe it might be a blessing in vain, if you like technical Jewish law explanations, that's a good one for that. And then possibly including the whole paragraph. And for all of these, there's one, like you can just sort of like chant your way through them, or there's a tune that you may have heard. That was written by Debbie Friedman, who died about 10 years ago. And although it was composed by a lesbian female Reformed Jew, it is in use around the world by like the most ultra-Orthodox You have no idea where it's coming from, who wrote it probably. But like it is the tune. Someone made a YouTube video of like Jews around the world. Like they tell you what countries everybody's singing this tune in. Like it's in Africa and Australia and Russia, like everywhere. So it is a useful tune to know. It makes Havdalah go from like, I think I do it in 2 to 3 minutes without it to like 4 or 5 minutes. You know, it lengthens it, but not significantly. But it is a good tune to know, and you can find YouTube videos of it if you don't know it already, or if you like, I can try to recommend something. After that, so we start at this point. We've said Hanav Jobin Kodesh L'Chol, and we have our lit candle. So now you have to put the fire out. So you've got options. You can blow it out, or you can dunk it. And if you dunk it, you can dunk it in the cup, or you can spill some grape juice or wine on a plate and dunk it on that. There are those, some people will then, if they dunk it, they will then dip their fingers in the wine and like put it in their pockets and on their eyelids for wealth and I don't know, something else, maybe good vision, probably not. I don't know why they're putting it on their eyes. But you can do that. My personal preference is to blow it out. I prefer this because A, it makes the cup easier to clean. B, I don't have to clean another dish. And C, I and the other people in my family can drink all the grape juice. But you know, do what you want. Just don't set your house on fire. So then, after you've done that, then we've got 2 more pieces to Havdalah. One is the song Eliyahu Hanavi. Elijah in the Bible told God that he was worried that he was the only faithful Jew left. And then later on in his life, conveniently, he got picked up and taken to heaven in a fiery chariot. And so because Elijah theoretically did not actually die, this means that not only can he return in Jewish folklore to be super useful at helpful moments, although always in disguise, but also we can invite Elijah to moments like Havdalah and Brisses and our Seder, although for the Seder, that's under the mission of telling us that the Messiah is here. So we sing Eliyahu Hanavi. It lends itself super well to a knock-knock joke. Knock-knock.
Who's there?
Eliyahu.
Eliyahu.
Eliyahu Hanavi. So, you know, you can lead in with that if you so choose. Also really good for Passover. When we open the door for Elijah and sing that same song. The other thing we sing or say is Shavuot, which translates literally to a week that is good or a good week. And this is usually sung to the tune Shavuot, 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 Shavuot. Sometimes people put English words in there. But yeah, and then afterwards you can greet everybody with Shavuot. And you can send emails that start or end with Shavuot. That's usually good through like at least Sunday, if not Monday. And the response to Shavuot is Shavuot. So we've, in an hour and a half, we've made it from lighting candles on one end to lighting candles on the other end and putting them out. Hopefully this gave you some more sense of the what and why of Shabbat. The thing about learning is that it's like opening a door to a hallway where there's a lot more doors. So now that you've made it into the ground floor or maybe the second floor of learning about Shabbat, you may want to take various stairwells behind doors to get up to further floors of information. So, as you have more questions or want suggestions about how to practically implement this in your life, or take it or add another piece of Shabbat to your life, be in touch. I've probably told both of you, I like small, silly, and stupid Jewish questions, but I do bigger ones too. So ask.
So when you were saying that the candle is braided because it's the intertwining of Shabbat and the rest of the week, why is the challah braided?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be challah, it could be any bread, really.
Right.
But
I don't know.
Isn't it? So, I mean, it's just supposed to be like to beautification, I thought. That's always been what
I think that is the answer that I've seen as well. There was a My Jewish Learning article about this once. Do you guys know My Jewish Learning?
Yep.
All right. No, my iPad's not working. Yeah, I believe. Let me just see if I can pull that up. Jewish Learning plus challah. Because that's the only place I remember seeing an explanation. Although I'm sure if I typed in why is challah braided, I would, Rav Google would give me some sort of good answer. Incidentally, there's a good search engine called Good Search. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this one, but Good Search is powered by Yahoo, but you can choose a charity, and then every time you do a search on it, they'll designate a penny for that charity. And if you register, then you can track. Then A, it will remember what you want, and B, you can track your earnings. Now, if you abuse the system, it'll be like, you're cheating, we're putting you in timeout. I've done that before. But it's an easy way to give tzedakah for a cause that you care about. I believe Har Zion is on there. Friends of the IDF is on there. There's like a whole slew of Jewish things and non-Jewish things. And really, it doesn't matter like what you give to, because Jewishly giving is the key thing. And it's an easy way of giving that doesn't cost you any money.
But just Google Good Search, or
you do goodsearch.com. It used to be a search engine, and then they became like a shopping portal. So Good Shop used to be it's like Wrigley. The gum used to be the giveaway, and then that became the big thing. So like Good Shop used to be the tail, and now it became the dog, and Good Search is the tail. But if you do goodsearch.com, it'll get you there. The other thing about Shabbat is that making a day different allows you to makes the other days better. It's like you can't drive from Seattle to Miami without your car breaking down if you don't rest. But if you but if you rest, then you can have the car's more effective. So I credit Shabbat with the fact that I didn't burn out my sophomore year of college, because I was involved in so many extracurriculars and had so much homework that if I didn't take one day and force myself to not be on email all the time, I think it would have been very hard. But you start small. If you're not ready to make it 25 hours without technology, then you can, make 1 hour on Saturday afternoon email free or phone free or whatever. As Tevye says in Fiddler on the Roof, good news will wait and bad news won't go away. And you build up from there, kind of like quitting smoking, quitting technology.
Read a book called How to Break Up with Phone, but it hasn't worked yet.
Oh. All right. I just did a quick good search for why is challah braided. I haven't clicked on any results, but I'm seeing a lot of like those search result nugget like snapshots that are all very fluffy. And so
I wonder if it's more just that a lot of the cooks had various versions of braided bread, and
that's possible. I'll do a little.
It's also, challah is also very, so it's a, whenever you get into bread making, it's like a very sturdy bread, in that like it can be braided. Whereas like if you do like a sourdough or baguettes or like those kinds of breads that are usually like a higher hydration, you can't do a lot of this kind of stuff with. So
right.
so since it's a sweeter bread like that, or an enriched bread.
The two things that I've seen are the idea that it's a way of differentiating your Shabbat bread from the rest of the week bread, and that there are other Eastern European breads that are also braided, and so someone was probably influenced by someone else. Yeah, I will look further and see if I can come up with a better answer. But I would say, I mean, like with textual interpretation, other Jewish rituals are like a multi-layer cake. All the layers of interpretation exist simultaneously, but usually one of them is the actual reason why something started. And it may or may not be the one that is textually grounded, but all the other layers on top of it, like the letter, like there's a prayer Ashrei. Ashrei is primarily Psalm 145. It's missing the letter Nun. So by the time of the Talmud, nobody knew, it's an alphabetical acrostic, but there's no line for the Nun. By the time of the Talmud, this line was missing, and they were like, why is there no Nun line? So they came up with an explanation of, oh, Nun starts the word nofel, which means fallen, and we don't have talking about Jewish people as having fallen. However, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found the Nun line. They found a version of Psalm 145 that did have Nun, and it talked about Ne'eman, faithful. God is faithful to the Jewish people. So probably what happened was there's a scribal error. Somebody was copying by hand, got distracted, went from the Nun line to the Samach line. The next person was copying off that version. Was like, huh, I guess there's no Nun in this one, and like just like lost it like that. So, I mean, there's a Jewish joke about this girl who asks her mother, "Why do you cut the end before you?" And like, I don't know, my mother always. So, ask her mother. I don't know, my mother always did that. So they go and find the great grandmother in a nursing home, and like, why? They go find the great grandmother in the nursing home, and they're like, tell us, like, why do we cut the ends of the brisket off? And great grandmother's like, well, I don't know why you do it, but I never had a pan big enough. So a lot of Jewish traditions like that, and I'm suspecting that challah braiding is probably going to be like that. There was a reason, and then lots and lots of other things got layered on top of it, all of which can be lovely and imbue your tradition and your ritual with significance, and you can pick whichever one works for you. And you can just know, like, and you can also say, oh, well, that's why it started, and like, it's something that connects. It's something that connects us to other Jews who also do this. So, and if none of the explanations work for you, make up your own. Or let me phrase that: if none of the, don't come up with a new origin story, but like you can come up with a with your own layer of meaning. Like I had a student who said that the reason we dip apples in the honey is because the apples are sour and we want to put honeyness on the sourness of it and the sourness of the past year. And I'm like, never heard that one before, but you are just as authorized as anybody else to come up with your own level of meaning for a Jewish custom. So, same thing with anything else in Judaism.
So I do have one other question that has been bothering me for years, actually, a little bit
Please.
on Shabbat. So I'd say the major thing is don't work on Shabbat. That's probably that's the major thing. So what about rabbis and cantors and
they are being paid for not taking, first of all, they're usually salaried, not hourly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one piece of it. And second of it is that it's described as they're being paid for not having taken a job somewhere else. It's kind of like if you don't show up for your doctor's appointment, we will charge you a fee anyway, because even though we didn't see you, we couldn't see another paying patient. But
I mean, clearly a rabbi's job is, besides being a community leader and all this stuff, I'd say the rabbi's main job is on Shabbat to lead services. Cantor, does so. Like, if that's their main task, that is what they're supposed to do on why they get salaried. How is is there like an exemption somewhere in in the rules that says, all right, well, yeah, you can do this, you can
right.
work.
Their main job is to be the spiritual leader for their congregation. Mm-hmm. So like it is less public, but they're still working the rest of the weekend. It's not just
no. I get it. It's just I don't know. Doing a service is definitely, I would say, working, and so it's always been like, all right, well, if that's if that's okay, then why can't we do Sunday school on Shabbat?
we can.
You can.
Since there are some of the guys that do it, they're like, families aren't going to show up for 2 days on the weekend. We might as well just try to get them all to come on Saturday, and we won't write on Shabbat, but
everything else,
But yeah, like you could play games and talk and
which.
Yeah.
So, but these are like kind of. I'm just like, I feel like that's like the one big thing about Shabbat is like don't do work, and the rabbi is doing 100% work. So I was like, there has to be some sort of like loophole somewhere in there, but
they're not breaking any of the 39 categories.
They're not breaking any of the 39 categories.
You can speak on Shabbat. You can sing on Shabbat. You can, I guess, I don't know what other things you do when you're leading services besides speaking and singing.
Reading.
And reading. Yeah, you can speak, read, and sing on Shabbat.
Carry a scroll.
Yes, you're inside your own building. It's a private domain.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, so that's why it is. It's the letter of the law versus spirit of the law, but like they are technically not breaking any of the rules of Shabbat. And that's like the idea of work, why it gets confusing. It's like you can pick up a really heavy book and schlep it within your house and put it down, and you have done work according to the laws of physics.
Yeah.
But you have not done any work according to Jewish law.
Yeah. Or like, so I understand somebody who's like a painter who's like, I'm, like can't paint on Shabbat, but like, somebody who's like, this is my leisure activity, like that's apparently, I didn't realize it is creating,
Yep, that's creating.
but at the same time, like, that's like letter of the law versus spirit of the law, which is, once again, this is where it gets very interesting and nuanced and fun stuff. So
Right. I mean, basically what it comes down to is you have to make your own decisions for what you're comfortable with. And then you factor in the decisions of anybody else that's in your life, what they're comfortable with. And then you factor in your peer group. And is anybody going to be uncomfortable spending time with you on Shabbat because of the things that you're doing? And do you care if they're uncomfortable or not? And like, if you can live with it and the people in your life can live with it and your friends can live with it, and you're not hurting anybody, then, you can go so far as to tear toilet paper differently because that makes Shabbat different.
yeah. Oh, by the way, I just thought of something. So how the response was that your rabbis aren't technically breaking one of the was it 39 rules?
Yeah, 39.
No, but I mean, the thing is, I'd say in the Torah, there's like, the rule is don't do work on Shabbat, whereas the 39 rules are like not in there. Those are like added on. So I mean, once again, that's where like the engineer in me, the logical likeness in me is like, if this is like the keystone where everything is built off of, like that's being broken, whereas like the ones that like people are saying, oh, this is what it actually means, they're like, we're not breaking this one, but we're breaking the keystone of it, so sorry.
No, you raise a good point. Letter of the law versus spirit of the law. I think then the way I would respond to that would be like, one, it may not be work. It may not feel like work. Like, if you're lucky, you have a job where you feel like you're getting to go play and like be paid to do the things that you like.
Yeah.
Like, I lead services and I have fun.
Yeah.
And I'm not a rabbi or a cantor. To like,
no, the thing is, I'm not trying to like trick or anything. I just, these are just like, like I said, questions that have like, that are like, these are the kinds of things that like I think of that I'm just like kind of,
these are good questions.
Always like answers too.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I completely get it. Plus, I mean, here's the thing: is Shabbat supposed to be different than every other day? How is it different? I mean, doing, honoring God at a Shabbat service. So I feel like there's nothing more, like nothing better than that in the first place. But so I mean, there's like a whole bunch of different arguments for and against. But like I said, I just
Yeah, and you don't need a rabbi or a cantor to have services.
Oh.
You just need people who know what they're doing.
Yeah. But thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing a makeup.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm glad that you guys wanted it. And keep emailing with questions and I'll keep getting you answers.
Yeah.
All right. Have a lovely evening. I look forward to seeing you all on Monday, hopefully, when we learn about getting drunk and Purim.
Yeah. Hey, Purim was like, I think, where we met last year. I think.
Yeah.
Well, really met. So thank you.
Yeah.
In person still?
You're what?
Last year it was.
But in person still? Pre-COVID?
Yeah. Last year was a pre-COVID. So I think that was like the last thing we did before.
Yeah.
COVID really started.
Done right after Purim.
So, all right. Well, see you Monday.
Okay.
Yep.
Good night. Thank
Good night.
you.
All right.